Hello, my name is Justin Hodges, and this is the Curriculum Night presentation for Latin 1. First off, I was going to tell you guys a little bit about myself so you get a sense of the strange man with a ponytail who is trying to teach Latin to your student. So I'll start off with my education. I graduated from Centennial High School in Roswell in 2008. I am from Alpharetta. And after graduating in 2008, I went to Georgia Southern University for my bachelor's degree in writing and linguistics with a focus in creative writing. There also the linguistic component taught me the tools that I now use to help teach Latin. And in 2014, 15, as well as 2016, I received my Master's of Education as well as my Educational Specialist degree in Curriculum and Instruction from Piedmont College. Here's a picture of my beautiful family. This is my wife Alita and my son Elliot. He just turned 3 the other day. And in November, we are expecting one more. So I will be out for a couple weeks leading up to Thanksgiving break. Everything will be put on its learning for students to navigate. Oops, whoa. So I just want to tell you a little bit about my teaching philosophy and how it pertains to teaching a second language to students. Language classes are notoriously, infamous for being very difficult and very challenging for students of all ability levels. I am very much interested in, teaching language in a way that is communicative to try and, kind of emulate the natural way that we learn a language, similar to how we learn English as young children, first by hearing it a lot and just getting a lot of input, and then over time, getting students' brains used to hearing and interpreting Latin, and kind of letting them at their own pace start to express themselves in that language. This year has been particularly challenging because, partner activities and group activities are kind of a central part of my pedagogy. I really like having students work together on things in situations that aren't just, divide and conquer, but more like we need to work together to figure this out because language being a primarily social tool, relationships lead you to learn a language better if you have to speak it with someone else. While studying is very important, language acquisition is a very incremental process. It's very slow and it takes place over a long period of time. And everybody kind of goes at their own pace. There are some students for whom studying every night is the best way that their brain learns a language, but I understand that's not the case for all students. So I do not assign a lot of homework. Typically, my homework consists of things that were not done in class that I tell students to complete for the next day. I will show you later how you can keep up with work from students, from your student, and kind of keep tabs on what they have due and when it's due. But I try and keep everything contained to class. I'm not big on homework. I try and keep the class relevant, which, with a language like Latin that hasn't been spoken, in its truest form in over 1,500 years. Relevance is difficult, but I really do try and get creative, come up with stories to engage students. And really, it's the content of those stories and using those stories as a way for students to understand Latin by understanding what's going on and emulate, like I said, that natural learning process that we as humans kind of possess. Also try and talk about the language in real world context, which is once again difficult because Latin is not spoken by any country. However, it is still used in a wide variety of places. Most parents hearing me say that probably are nodding in agreement that you see it pop up here and there, and we'll try and relate that as well as events from Roman history and Roman mythology to modern day history and modern day mythologies that we kind of go along with. And lastly, while my class, my emphasis is really to be as engaging as possible to keep the students' attention in order for them to receive the input of the language that kind of allows their brain to do the work of decoding the language and finding the patterns on its own. I do try and hold students to a high standard of work while also being flexible and understanding that not everybody learns in the same way. I'll kind of explain a little later the method with which I do that in relation to tests and how I try and adjust for students who may not be great test takers, because I wasn't a great test taker in my day. Oops. Oh, so I see the bottom half of this screen's cut off for you, but that's okay. This was really a screen for students. But what I tell students, these are the expectations for learning in my class. Since a language is a natural thing, I tell students to not just try and cram and memorize vocab words. That is not how your brain actually learns a language. But actually, there's less work than that. If they can sit back and listen and actively absorb what is going on in here, then their brain is doing a lot of the work of cramming and memorizing for them at a lower effort. Two, I tell students not to worry about the why something means this or that, or how a sentence works, by worrying about grammar points and by worrying about different vocab words. When we speak English, we do not, analyze every word we use before we use it. And one could argue that people could think a little more before they speak these days, but that's neither here nor there. That's not, in trying to emulate the natural process of language learning, it's really about getting the students to, train their mind to kind of accept the language as it is. And that it's funny because for them that requires doing less work. However, it's just very different from the way they've tried to learn anything else before, or many things in the past. And number three, I tell students not to write down something unless I tell them to. There's a lot of emphasis in the education system on, all right, sit down, get this information, write it down, go home, memorize it, and come back and regurgitate it to me so you can forget it the next day. Since I am more focused on a communicative pedagogy and communicating and talking back and forth with students, or writing back and forth with students, or telling students a story and having them listen to it, I try and encourage them to more be in the moment while they're in class to maximize the use of that class time. What I tell them to do is to focus on the message that is coming across. Did you understand the message that was either written or spoken? Meaning, like, was the input of the second language that I provided, did you comprehend it? And sometimes, it's a matter of a concept clicking. And sometimes that doesn't happen right away, but it does happen eventually. And the other thing I tell students to do is respond to the prompts. I tell them to be active participants in my class. I know some students are very introverted and don't like speaking out loud, and that's okay. Interaction is not limited to speaking or writing. Head nod, a thumbs up, a thumbs down, things like that. Those are all interactions. But I tell students to be active in this so that I know that they're listening. And if they can show me that they're listening, then I know that they are learning, even if it doesn't feel that way all the time. So the way this course is structured, I will kind of break this down. Summative grades are test grades. They make up 75% of the average in this class. Formatives are class work, and they make up about 25% of the grade in this class. For me personally, I would prefer it to be the other way around. I think the day-to-day work is much more indicative of what a student knows rather than just how they can do on one particular day. But once again, neither here nor there, can't change it, so we have to work within it. I'm going the wrong direction, sorry. So summatives that students will have in this class. This class is broken down at the beginning into stages. We will go through the 12 stages of our textbook called the Cambridge Latin Course, Unit 1. And at each stage takes roughly 2 to 3 weeks to complete. And at the end of those 2 to 3 weeks, there will be a unit test that kind of focuses on the stories and the grammatical concepts that were picked up in that in reading those stories. However, like I said earlier, not all students are great test takers. Once again, I can relate to this. I was not a great test taker. For this reason, students will also be receiving next week a portfolio. It's basically just a folder, a pocketed folder with brads in it, so that students can keep a collection of their work. For every test, if a student does poorly on a test, but they feel like they did the work, they can bring me their proficiency portfolio, and I can do a portfolio check instead that can supplement the poor test grade if they can show me that they have completed the work that, matches kind of the material that we did on the test. So if, your student, you saw them studying all night last night and you saw them, really putting in the time and effort, and then they come in and make, a 70, 75, or even, a failing grade, a 60, or whatever. Then they can schedule a time with me. And this is just as simple as them coming up and asking me, Mr. Hodges, I would like to talk to you about my portfolio. I'll schedule a time with them during Raider time during the school day for them to come down and have a conference with me that'll last probably 10 minutes or so, where we go over the stuff in their portfolio that they feel matches this, and I can use this portfolio grade to supplement their test grade, because tests are really just assessments of their ability to understand Latin. If they can show it to me in the form of a portfolio and work they did while they didn't have the pressure of a test, that to me is just as valid as a test grade. We will also, I am very much trying this year to incorporate more history and mythology and culture among the Latin translation. And so we'll have a couple projects here and there. The big one that we'll have coming up in October is the Cucurbita Mythologica, the mythology pumpkin, where students will all get a pumpkin, or if they need, I will get one for them. And they can, and they will carve a mythology themed pumpkin and write up a story about it. Lastly, summative grade, receiving input. Like I said earlier, this class is very much around being communicative and receiving input of the second language, of me speaking Latin or reading Latin. The receiving input grade is essentially an active participation grade. If a student shows up every day, they're responding to the prompts, they are assessing whether or not they're able to comprehend the Latin that's going on, and if they can't, taking the steps to correct that. Then this is a grade that's kind of meant to supplement that and show that. If a student is participating, then they need to be rewarded for it, because participation is a hard thing among these students. And lastly, the formatives over here, I will not go too deep into these, because the one other aspect of communicative teaching is that the brain, in trying to learn a language, craves novelty. It craves new experiences. And so just doing the same things over and over again, the returns on learning on those diminish. So here's a list of a couple things that we do. They're kind of broad, but day to day, we will be doing different things in here, whether it be like creating cartoons, working together to create a story in Latin, answering questions about themselves. After we read a story, reinterpreting that story or answering questions about it. Obviously, we will have quizzes in here. But any quiz that they do can be taken over and over again until they show that they know it, with no penalties. And lastly, a lot of speaking, a lot of listening, and a lot of reading. What I tell students is my rules are pretty simple. I tell them to be excellent to each other, to allow others to learn, to not sell themselves short, and if they have good music, to tell me about it, and to wash their freaking hands, just to try and keep school open as long as possible. I'm very big on music, and I feel like it's a great way to bond with students. I am a fan of all types of music, and I love talking about it with them, and that's one of the ways that I really get to know them. Parents too, actually. So parents, if you have good music, please email it to me. And don't worry about what genres I like, surprise me. Don't sell yourself short. A lot of students lose confidence in themselves, and that tends to lead to avoidance. Allowing others to learn, trying to not be disruptive, be cognizant of others, and this be excellent to each other goes in the same vein. There will be a link to this presentation. This link right here will take students to the required accounts page that is where everything they need online will be. And lastly, here's my contact information as well as extra help. On Tuesday mornings, 7:45 to 8:15 a.m. and Wednesday, 3:45 to 4:15 p.m., I am here and I am available. If those days don't work, I can stay before or after school by appointment. Just need to give me a little heads up, or Raider time sessions in school. Lastly, contact information. My email is always open, jhodges@forsyth.k12.ga.us. Or to subscribe to my Remind, and I encourage all parents to subscribe to it, is to text this code to 81010. And that way you can keep up with what's going on in my class. It's been a pleasure. If you need anything, please hit me up here, and I hope to speak with you soon. Thank you.